It is Tuesday, the 18th of November, 2025, and I'm going to talk a little bit about international politics, Canadian politics, because I'm Canadian. It matters to me, and because there's just been a lot. There's just been so much, and I don't even know where to start, but there's going to be a few clips that I'm going to be sharing regarding international news and my opinions on them, and things that I think that people should know about that mainstream media, politicians are not talking about. And then I'm going to get into a video I have not seen yet from Candace Owens regarding the Charlie Kirk assassination. And because, again, I'm always open to exploring all conspiracies, all theories, like I've said before. And if there's more information that comes to light that actually shows proof of conspiracies, then let me see it. And so I haven't seen the video yet. I was waiting to make it a true reaction and see what she has to say. It was from yesterday, so plus she has a lot of viewers, and so it's good to know what she's saying, because there are times where she has really great work and sometimes where she's a little off the mark, but everyone's like that. So because of the vote on the budget, which passed, disgusting, it was so close, and there were people that abstained. I've said this before with the NDP, likely they were going to abstain because they're cowards. And by the way, if you abstain and you have no good reason for it, like one of the conservative MPs, she was out because she had to have some kind of dental surgery thing, and so she had an excuse. But for the people that abstained, you were elected for these very reasons, to vote on important topics like this, and you failed us. And because of that, the budget has passed. Absolutely abhorrent. And I'll get into that more. And so if you take a look at this, because people were saying that government was filibustering and it's been prorogued again, it has not been. Because they're saying, because the scandal with Stephen Guilbeault and his company, and where they were taking hundreds of millions of dollars, upwards to now almost $400 million from the green energy, the slush fund, the stuff that Stephen Guilbeault was pushing, this corrupted traitor fraud. And so anyways, RCMP is investigating. And then I guess this past October, again, people within the Conservative Party, they were, again, trying to get accountability for this. Like, this guy needs to be investigated. There are other people within the House of Commons, within cabinet, that have been there for a decade and need to be fired and resign. They're traitors to Canada. And they have shares and stocks in companies, or their friends and family do. They're getting kickbacks. Their shares are going through the roof. This is why this is a conflict of interest. Carney should have never been our prime minister. This was too much. I've said this since the beginning. Okay. And people don't even see what happened with Nancy Pelosi and her trading. And but he's the prime minister. Like, this is absolutely ridiculous. So there's a lot of people within the House of Commons. I was even saying Marco Mendicino, with his wife having shares and stocks in Northrop Grumman, and then passing all these bills to put so much money into these military industrial complex companies. All right, and this was for Ukraine, and then more money for what's going on in Israel. And again, because these people have shares and stocks in Lockheed Martin, in Raytheon, in Palantir, and all these companies that are now getting awarded these major contracts. Brookfield, we're promising $4.5 billion to Brookfield, which moved out of Canada, not completely, but into New York. And then he promised $4.5 billion or whatever it was to Ukraine. So, and Brookfield likely going to be working within Ukraine and BlackRock, and it's just such a mess. And it's unfortunate that we had a Bilderberg WEF puppet who we voted in, not me, but yeah, and he was booed at some kind of a sporting event. I don't watch sports really all that much anymore. And multiple times, so halfway through he left, and people are saying, "Oh, I can't believe Canadians are doing that." Why? Good. That's the least we can do. If this guy, at least some public shaming, which he rightfully deserves because he's destroyed our country. Okay, he was fine. He was a financial advisor, 2020, 2021, Bank of Canada. He hollowed out the middle class, hollowed out key core infrastructure during his tenure, and a printing of the money during COVID. These CERB benefits that were that were not being properly managed, where hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars were getting siphoned that we'll never see back. These are taxpayers' dollars. Okay. And with this budget, with no anchors or anything, and trying to move $92 billion to make it look like these are operational costs and not part of our debt. Or anyway, it's criminal. But yeah, a Bilderberg WEF puppet is now our prime minister, and he's selected, appointed people that have worked with him or around him for many years, including Mark, was it Wiseman or whatever his name is, replacement migrate, Century 21 initiative. Yeah, people that have kickbacks and also know that people that come and immigrate into the Western countries, they're voting predominantly, and this is coming out of their mouths as well, predominantly left. And the left, because they've been in for a long time now, they have become more and more and more far left radical, where we have someone that quotes Marxist like ideologies in a book, and is a socialist. And socialism leads to communism. And if you look at Norway, I'm not even in this post yet that I wanted to share on Grok, but like if you look at Norway, because of how good they're doing with their economy, they have like a $2 trillion surplus right now. It's unbelievable. Canada could have been like that. We could still be like that, where we have a surplus because of our oil industry, because of agriculture. If we were doing this ourselves, farming, fishing, like I said, agriculture is obviously farming, but the steel, lumber, we have so many resources, like the hydroelectricity. We have so much water, like largest coasts. Like there's so much that we could do where we would have a surplus, and we have not done that. And this is because these are getting stopped in the House of Commons. All right. And we're nowhere near prepared to be able to supply minerals and resources like oil, etc., to other countries yet, because we don't have the infrastructure. So it has to be approved yet again and again. And then built. And this will take years, and we haven't even started yet. And again, Quebec, people that are voting, again, the Bloc, Legault and Blanchette, okay, they have shares in stock. They're corrupted too. They have shares in stocks and companies that, that they're voting on. They're voting down bills and measures that like go against that will like make them lose their shares in stocks or their investments or assets or whatever. They're out for themselves, and because they have not been held accountable yet, again, fired, forced to resign, investigated, etc. It's getting worse and worse, and it's just really, really frustrating. And during Remembrance Day, we had judges, actual friggin' judges, that were refusing to allow poppies to be worn in the courtroom. I just can't even believe it, because the only reason why you are there as a judge in a free goddamn country with like an executive, judicial, legislative, etc., like, is because of veterans, because of people that fought for our freedoms and liberties, etc., including going overseas, okay, in trench warfare and stuff like that. You friggin' pansy, not wanting a poppy in your goddamn courtroom. It's not even your courtroom. Taxpayer money. It's absolutely ridiculous to me. And out of the 9 Supreme Court judges that we have in Canada, 6 were appointed by Justin Trudeau, okay, a socialist leftist. And so even what went on with the CFIA and with the RCMP, the murdering of, I think it was definitely over 300 ostriches, but close to 400 ostriches. And the Supreme Court denied an appeal. Absolutely disgusting. And these birds did not have avian flu. So people are saying, you idiots are trying to contain the avian flu, you morons. There were 2 birds that died and were tested last year. And again, with PCR tests, even the guy that made the PCR test said that if you cycle these tests to like over a certain threshold, it's guaranteed gonna like have a false positive. And there are birds that, again, they have showed no indications of health issues at all for almost a year. Refuse to have them tested again for over a year, even before they murdered them. I'm sure they're testing their bodies now, the carcasses now, like, yeah, anyways. And even the cleanup has been abhorrent. And I know people that are on the ground there that have talked to them, interviewed them, and we've communicated back and forth. And it's absolutely disgusting what happened to these people. And Canada is not mad enough. And it's because, again, we have left media that are lying, state-funded propaganda, and not enough people are calling to, again, respectfully, peacefully, to hold them accountable for their lies. I have for years, and I've stopped. Now I do videos, but where I was emailing tip lines media all over Canada, but especially in Ottawa, because this is where I was, and I was offering to do interviews. I gave them links to so much information, medical, scientific, and government data, to CBC, to CTV, to Toronto Star, to Globe and Mail, to Mercedes Stevens, to all of these friggin' people, calling them up as well and getting hung up on or laughed at, or, like they just didn't care. And so, go fuck yourselves, mainstream media. Mercedes Stevenson, the same thing. Like during like the COVID era, like that sex scandal with W5, November of 2021. Even though the people that she's whose lives she screwed over and she was wrong, reputations ruined. They had to go to the courts and charges dropped in some cases, etc. But she was wrong, and a lot of it grossly over exaggerated, disgusting. And it was people that were forced to resign because of humiliation, or just because they were forced to by the chain of command, and they were not wanting to impose like forced inoculations on Canadian Armed Forces soldiers, or these strict mandates and lockdowns, etc., and talked about the legalities and informed consent and this and that. That was not FDA goddamn approved, and only authorized. And they were resigned, and then we got Wayne Eyre, who wrote the Can4 gens, etc., with not even backed with medical or scientific data at all, like actual legit data. And it's all coming out now, but it's frustrating. And but anyway, so Remembrance Day, our justice system thinks that poppies are a trigger, they're triggering or somehow political. Yet they took almost 2 weeks off this year. They usually get a couple of days. By the way, if you work in government, it's not a national holiday. Like no one gets time off for this. But the House of Commons, they're back to work on the 25th, and it's because of Remembrance Day. That was on the 11th. It's already been a week. So almost 2 weeks they're going to take off for Remembrance Day. Like, no, this is unheard of. And it's on the taxpayer's dollar, by the way, which pisses me off even more, where even us veterans, anyways, it's not a national holiday. And people even serving in government is what I wanted to say. Like, they don't even get that day off. And yet these clowns, what I'm saying is the swamp in Ottawa, they don't care about the first responder types, the people that are having to impose and enforce these tyrannical measures and bills and things like that they're implementing here in Ottawa. And again, we have a swamp. We have like a Washington, D.C. thing going on here. So the nerve. And so I was talking about the Green Slush Fund and Stephen Guilbeault and multiple others. They need to be in jail or resign, but instead promoted. He's something else in cabinet. Absolutely disgusting. Makes so much money, and he should be in jail. And the Conservatives, and this is just not even an exaggeration. Like even the Conservative MPs, elected officials in government, they have been calling for investigations in RCMP, doing nothing. In order to get the trust back from Canadians, you need to start doing your job. I looked at a bunch of things on Grok, but I won't get into it because I still want to get into the Candace Owens video. I was working out yesterday, and I lifted a little too hard, just getting back into legs and stuff like that, and like my back is a little sore because I do have a back injury. I always have to be aware of the fact that I have to make sure that I have proper form, focused. Okay, which one is this one? Oh yeah, Bill Maher actually he did a warning to Canada as well in the last few days, or in the last few weeks, but I've only seen it in the last few days. A warning to Canada just because of how much of a disaster of a shit show we're experiencing, and people are trying to blame it on Trump and the tariffs. And a large percentage of our imports to them are not tariffed, still abiding by the USMCA, whatever you want to call it. And Trump only got in office in January. Our prices have been through the roof now, like especially since COVID, and not getting better at, like even after the lockdowns and the mandate. In fact, it got worse after that. And with the carbon tax scams, the green slush funds, again, where like people within the House of Commons and their friends and family are making mint and not being held accountable at all for missing funds, misappropriating funds, all of that stuff, and hiring companies like McKinsey and for the ArriveCan scam app and stuff like that. Again, these are millions of dollars taken from taxpayers, and it's laughed at. And So we had issues with our economy, the printing of the money, this all of that stuff. I could go on a tangent about that, and not abiding by the USMCA either. Canadians were at fault for having significant amounts of tariffs on products like dairy, called it a dairy cartel, and multiple other products I've talked about before, and showed just how much we were in tariffing them, like over 200% in some cases, over 600% in some cases. And so that was a retaliation, possibly, and self-interest. But even in the last few days, because there are people within the USA that have put pressure on Trump to ease the tariffs on Canadian products, and he has since agreed to that. And so yeah, our problems economically, they're trying to blame it on Trump again. Like the tariffs, yeah, it's not helping us. I agree, it's not helping the U.S. either, and we should be the main friggin' like the major ally of the US, not Israel, not any other country, not China. Like no, like it should be Canada because of all the resources and assets we have. And if they were to give us invest invest in us, but again, like not take over, but invest in us like they were doing, right? Because there was always like a surplus of a couple hundred million, sorry, a couple $100 billion that was going into Canada from the US to invest that money not into the tech, not into AI bullshit like Carney was doing, and people like and our cabinet was doing, none of that, but to like, invest in mining, in oil refineries, in pipelines, in agriculture, in stimulating rural areas economic growth, and in the independence for the provinces and the territories, and less trade barriers. But again, like but working primarily with the U.S. as our major allies, especially in the short term, because we don't have the infrastructure to even sell to other countries to even remotely compare to the amount of money that we were getting from the US, right? So in the short term, people like Doug Ford, with that advertisement, he should be forced to resign because we got punished for that. That was disgusting. He's a fake conservative, and he's another one that's not helping the conservative movement. He's not helping at all. And you've got people like Pierre who have been completely demonized, vilified for years now in the mainstream media, and not with any substance. Just attack, just again, just like brainwash and continue to indoctrinate people just to make sure that they don't think for themselves. And then they always vote liberal, and calling him a bad guy, and even getting people that are fake conservatives on these forums, these interviews, national broadcasts, provincial broadcasts, and saying like, oh, Pierre's not a nice guy. What are you talking about? I've actually met him personally, and he seemed like a very well-informed, well-educated, really respectful, kind person. And so there's a difference between being a good person and a nice person. And I do think that, and again, there's things that I've called out with him as well, especially like during COVID and things like that. But he wasn't the leader of the party. It was Andrew Scheer, Aaron O'Toole types, and they were the reasons why I didn't vote conservative in 2021. I voted PPC because the conservatives were not calling out the mass immigration that was starting to happen, not at the levels that we used to have, that were sustainable and that were that assisted the economy and things like that, but just like through the roof. Nothing said, crickets, because they didn't want to sound like racists. Well, stats are not racist. Objective data is not racist. So you should be talking about this stuff, showing the data, and let the cards fall where they do. And knowing that mainstream media, because they are now state-funded media for over a decade, and getting more and more bonuses and increases in their budgets, like they're never gonna want the conservatives to win. It's a full-time job for them to smear the conservatives because they care more about themselves and their money and less about lying to Canadians, where it's causing just so much harm and death. Like even during COVID, that was very clear to me as well. And then COVID as well, not allowing people that weren't vaccinated to go into speaking conventions that they were attending, and bragging about people within cabinet 100% being vaccinated, et cetera, et cetera. This was incorrect, as we're seeing more and more now. And the lab leak, the gain of function, the debunked original trials not having placebo effect, and Pat King confirming that he was even part of those trials, and in fact that was the case, and not aspirating needles, not FDA approved, even though we had alternate treatments that were available in order to treat this. The 99.8% survivability rate, et cetera, this being a respiratory disease, again, that was leaked. Whether it was accidental or not, we were not able to do proper investigations by unbiased parties. So will we ever know? But I do think there were multiple labs throughout the world that were that were involved in this, and that the inoculation itself, which I'm going to get more into, again, I'm rambling on, but that people were contracting COVID via inoculation. And I shared the Pfizer VAERS reports and underreported, and so I show the receipts. So anyways, back to Bill Maher. Yeah, see, that's what I mean. I go on all these friggin' tangents. But yeah, he's warning Canada that we are collapsing. And I don't know what this video is about, though.
I love that.
I wouldn't have mentioned it. I'm English, and you know that politeness is our fundamental religion.
Yeah.
But they do pertain to this issue, so may I say some of them?
Please.
If
Oh,
they
yeah.
inconvenience you, I'll stop saying them. The pandemic created at least 40 new big pharma billionaires. Pharmaceutical corporations like Moderna and Pfizer made $1,000 of profit every second from the COVID-19 vaccine. More than 2/3 of Congress received campaign funding from pharmaceutical companies in the 2020 election. Pfizer chairman Albert Bourla told Time magazine in July 2020 that his company was developing a COVID vaccine for the good of humanity, not for money. And of course, Pfizer made $100 billion in profit.
Canada contracts with Pfizer and Moderna, but like these were in the hundreds of millions of dollars, and now it's over $1 billion, I'm sure. And people within the House of Commons and cabinet had, and probably still do, and including Carney, by the way, shares and stocks in these companies. This was absolutely criminal.
In 2022. And may I just mention, finally, and this is also a fact, that the American public, funded the development of that. The German public funded the BioNTech vaccine. When it came to the profits, they took the profits. When it came to the funding, you paid for the funding.
You know how in universities, when there are people like theoretical physicists, etc., that do work like during their tenure, academic institutions, anything they do, anything they can't patent anything on their own individually. Like the school takes ownership of anything that they've designed or created or invented, and so the same thing should be for government. All right, all these profits that Pfizer and Moderna got, etc., like all these friggin' clowns that were somehow elected by friggin' morons in Canada, respectfully speaking. Again, we did this to ourselves largely too, but I understand because we've been brainwashed through our academic systems and through the media and these corrupted politicians now for over a decade. And so again, it's tragic, but sorry, this is bringing just so much up. I know I'm cutting Russell Brand off and he's amazing, but it's, these profits, absolutely. We funded these programs. We funded the building of these institutions. We're funding the salaries of these people. So yeah, give us the money. Bill Gates, who had five times the return on his investment, which is unheard of.
Is this.
Yes.
Is if you have an economic system in which pharmaceutical companies benefit hugely from medical emergencies, where a military-industrial complex benefits from war, where energy companies benefit from energy crises, you are going to generate states of perpetual crisis, where the interests of ordinary people separate from the interests of the elite.
I love that.
I wouldn't have mentioned it. I'm English, and you know that politeness is our fundamental religion.
This was the budget officer that just got fired for being honest.
As somebody who's responsible for fiscal transparency, I do need to point out that nobody has had this discussion. So during the 2025 election campaign, all major political parties identified a declining debt to GDP ratio as being the most important fiscal anchor. We're now in a situation on September 18th, in response to a question in QP, the Prime Minister himself said one of the three fiscal anchors for this government was a declining debt to GDP ratio. Don't believe me? Look it up in Hansard. All of a sudden in the budget, that anchor that we've had for 30 years, the most important fiscal anchor, is gone without any discussion whatsoever. And now we're in new territory where potentially we're going to be borrowing substantially more money the next time.
This is like, and I'm saying, I'll always say peaceful. I think that people should be contacting their mayors, their elected officials, the House of Commons, emailing cabinet members respectfully, peacefully, but voicing your concerns and providing data if you can. And calling, again, being peaceful and respectful. That's the only friggin' way anyone's going to listen to you. You know, don't go full psycho, right? Like no one wants to hear that. No one. And address your concerns, because this is war, essentially. I've said that there's different forms of war. Okay. There's conventional warfare, transitional, all of that stuff, but there's also economic warfare. And this is absolutely a declaration of war on Canadians over 30 years. And there's no anchors. And it wasn't even discussed. And it was promised. He lied. And it goes even worse than that. And this guy, I forget what his name is, but it's probably here. Anyways, Jasmine Lane, because he's been talking a lot. And again, I respect the hell out of this guy. Protect him at all costs. She does a good breakdown of more interviews he's done and voicing a lot of concerns about the budget that just passed yesterday. Disgusting.
The next time that there's an economic shock, and it's not for me to judge that, it is for me to point out that nobody has had a meaningful discussion around that. As somebody who's responsible for fiscal transparency.
I have that one up. I fact checked this, and it's true.
Wait, who's the largest American donor to APAC, like in the whole country? OnlyFans. Wait, who's the largest?
Yeah, so a major donation done from OnlyFans in on or around October 7th, 2023. But I think it was like 11 or 12 million dollars, so way more than APAC's got from like other donors before. But you also had Miriam Adelson, who again I've talked about for years now, that's funding a large donor funder to APAC, and then you've got the WhatsApp guy owner, and anyway, and these are traitors to the U.S. Traitors to the U.S. All right.
Unfortunately, she's president.
I'm gonna refresh this. Okay.
I think ultimately behind it is Susie Wiles.
Susie Wiles is Trump's chief of staff. I've also talked about her for a while now. I think I have videos with her in the title if you want to take a look at those. And I've said, like, she is someone of concern. I don't know why Trump chose her. I think he wanted the status quo, and there was like loyalty there, but again, it's fake loyalty because it's not in America's best interest. And I went on this tangent with the U.S., but they could be our major allies, and we within North America could be like the strongest continent, a region of the world there is in so many different ways, resources, economically, et cetera, et cetera. We have shared cultures and values, and even our Charter of Rights, very similar to I wish it was like the Constitution more. Oh my goodness. But yes, she, I think, is responsible for being in his ear and getting him to do things that he has no business doing.
Unfortunately, she's President Trump's chief of staff. They didn't want the status quo changed.
Oh, there you go.
And they've jumped into bed with Big Pharma. Americans are being shined on. There's not going to be any criminal prosecutions of Fauci and these other people. There's not going to be any RICOs. You're not going to break.
And Fauci should be in jail, and he was pardoned. Disgusting. People say that he could be still prosecuted because he committed fraud, knowing what he knew about the inoculations, the gain of function, the VAERS, etc. Like that was fraud. Knowing that there were alternative treatments, knowing that they had no business forcing this on people, especially within government, which is where they start, because then they get compliance, and then they get compliance from the people that are going to be enforcing everyone else within the society to do the same thing. So it's status quo. I've talked about this in previous videos, but Trump's chief of staff, Wiles, worked for Mercury LLC, and to my knowledge is still a managing partner. Mercury has represented Pfizer. Gavi's another friggin' scam. Oh my God, corrupted organization involved with WEF and the World Health Organization, who also, again, they have been corrupted. She brought in Pam Bondi, who represented Pfizer in the past year. Yeah, so I think people are moving away from saying MAHA and MAGA to America First.
Pfizer up. In fact, the president was shaking hands with the head of Pfizer the other day and announcing that he'd had a messenger RNA COVID vaccine. One, that he didn't need.
Yeah, why?
Two, isn't for the strain that's circulating now. And poor Mr. Kennedy's in the background looking like the emperor with no clothes. This is outrageous.
Do you think Kennedy made a deal? Do you think Kennedy made a deal, though, like that we don't know about?
No, he's a strong man. I think he got shoved out of the way, or they've got something on him.
We're both.
Things, I think ultimately behind it is Susie Wiles. Unfortunately, she's President Trump's chief of staff.
Okay, but yeah, and him getting the COVID flu vaccine, not a vaccine, just recently. Just interesting. When I was in university, I had a political science degree from RMC. It's called the Royal Military College in Canada. It's a military university. We just call it a college because of the Commonwealth being part of Britain's heritage, et cetera, et cetera. But it is a university. But anyway, and this was many years ago. And I wasn't learning even then, which was very interesting, like too much about Milton Friedman, who I ended up learning about anyways, but through my own research, through academia and then beyond that, and or Margaret Thatcher. And it's just very, very interesting. And so, but I would have conversations with people, and because I was actually more liberal when, like before university. Like I said, I voted for 3 different parties in my life. First time I voted liberal, and then through university, I would have arguments and debates with people that were on the right, and they were strong arguments. And so like that, and then I was asked, if I ever heard of Margaret Thatcher. I had not at that point. And then I started looking into her, and she was just brilliant. And so, but anyways, in the last week, I've started to reminisce, and I've shared a lot of her stuff before. But take a look at her work and interviews she's done, things that she's written, things that she has said, and she, like, I wish that we had a conservative representative or a political representative of like a woman like Margaret Thatcher, but I don't see it. I think Danielle Smith could be that. She doesn't. I don't think she has a political science background or anything like that. But I mean, if she would get more immersed, she's very brilliant. But into like Margaret Thatcher, if she hasn't already, then then that would be very interesting. And then she could possibly be the first female prime minister of Canada in the next decade or so. But I still think that Pierre Poilievre should have his time. Okay, the elections that we had, like, it was absolutely atrocious just how it unfolded this year, and I think he should be given another chance. Absolutely, I don't know why people within the Conservative Party always think that it's like we need to have like a new party leader, in order to like fix things. Okay, you're never going to be able to fix the like people within mainstream media and politicians, etc., attacking conservatives. This is their full-time job. So it doesn't matter who you have in as the leader. Like, no one is going to like them for the most part within Canada because, again, like because of the indoctrination, large-scale inoculation, and like the leftist rhetoric that's being pushed in academia, in elementary school, and high school, and university. And until we address that, there's nothing we can do. Because we learned a lot about the Nazis in World War I and World War II, and about far-right extremism, as we should. But we really missed the mark on ever addressing the wars on the people, okay, under communist dictatorship regimes, whatever you want to call them, with atheist rulership as well involved in that, but under communist socialist ideologies, millions of more people that have died under those regimes, and silent wars, whatever you want to call it. Not silent, but doesn't involve the world. They try to expand outwards, but yeah. People need to learn more about socialist communist regimes.
To keep more of the money you earn, I'm afraid that's very selfish. We shall want to tax that away. You want to own shares in your firm? We can't have that. The state has to own your firm. You want to choose where to send your children to school? That's very divisive. You'll send your child where we tell you. Socialists don't like ordinary people choosing, for they might not choose socialism. You want to keep more of the money you earn.
She was so smart. Let's see what else I had here of her. Yeah, Daniel Steele. I like her. And Tucker Carlson, I do like him way more than like Ben Shapiro and these clowns. And people within America are choosing Tucker over Ben Shapiro, which is nice to see for the most part. But there's so much money being invested into these smear campaigns against anyone who's trying to speak out against Netanyahu, who's a war criminal and guilty of crimes against humanity, and a Zionist radical and a racist. And Smotrich and Ben Gvir. And they're not even people that follow the Jewish religion, like Judaism. Secular Israelis.
Capitalism has a moral basis. The reason being, unless you have economic freedom, you will have no other freedom at all.
Yeah.
So the whole of the capitalist society is a moral basis. The basis is that the individual is here to develop his or her talents. He cannot do that without both political freedom and economic freedom. The only kind of society under which you can do that is a capitalist society. To be free, you have to be capitalist. Every free society in the world is a capitalist society.
Equal opportunity does not mean equal outcome. So, because I was talking about Milton Friedman as well, and I want to see if they have anything here that I saved. I think I did see something.
How much government intervention do you think is necessary to prevent the rise of monopoly and oligopoly under the free enterprise system, or would it take care of itself if left
Well,
alone?
I believe if you examine the sources of monopoly and oligopoly, you will find that almost all those sources are government intervention. I think the situation is almost precisely the reverse. Let me put it in a very simple way. Suppose I were to ask this audience my favorite question along these lines. You have one law you can pass. Its only purpose is to reduce the extent of monopoly. That's its only purpose. You have one law. What law would be most effective in achieving that end? What law would you pass? I don't mean any gimmicks. You know, it's not going to be something in which you can have a law with 4,000 different parts. I'm not asking a very complicated question. What would you do?
Limit the size of the market that they could.
Well, that's one proposal, the limit is proposal. But you will agree with me, I'm sure, immediately that mine is a much better one. And that's free trade.
Yep.
Eliminate all tariffs and all restrictions on foreign trade, and you enable the world to come
At least
in
with the U.S.
as competition to prevent domestic monopoly. Wouldn't that do a great deal more good in preventing monopoly than would a limit on the size of enterprises with much less restriction in human freedom? Now, if you ask yourself, where do monopolies come from? In the United States, the most important and the strongest monopolies are unquestionably those that derive from governmental privilege. The monopoly of a TV license granted by the government at a zero price. That's a source of monopoly privilege. It also has been a source of wealth for some notable Americans. The grant of a tariff protection. Would the steel industry in the United States have any kind of monopoly or oligopoly position if it weren't able to get government to impose restrictions on imports of foreign items and so on?
How much government intervention do you think is necessary to prevent?
I want to see if there's just one more thing from Milton Friedman, and then I will. But yeah, take a look at him, Margaret Thatcher, like brilliant people. You don't have to agree with everything. Kicking the books, Carney, you're such a sellout.
I must say to my friends, be very wary of high taxes. Any government that has high taxation is giving itself more powers and the people less. When I came into office, the top tax on earnings was 83%. The top tax on savings was 98%. No wonder our economy was collapsing. I must say to my
And in the last decade, I could be wrong on this, like almost doubled government. We have a bloated government now. Why? Because of people getting hired for the green energy bullshit, the carbon scam stuff, like so many people, for climate change, for like woke DEI stuff, like so many bloated government jobs, and that are not necessary, that are causing a lot more harm than good and making life unmanageable. And we keep getting away with it. Less government, not more. We have a population now which should be under 42 million, but we're at approximately 42 million right now. We do not need the amount of government bloat that we have. These are not the first responder types. This is not like nurses and doctors and paramedics and it's none of that. It's a lot of people that don't need to have any certifications or qualifications really to even get these jobs, and they're really high paying jobs. The people that are friggin' the Karens with the purple hair, the blue hair, again, they don't even need to have a dress code in a lot of these jobs. And anyway, I'm going on a tangent. Okay, I'll show one more clip from Instagram, and then I'll get into the Charlie Kirk updates. I haven't seen yet, but I do know, I don't know if she's going to be talking about the fact that, and I've said this at the beginning as well, that Charlie Kirk refused allegedly $150 million from Netanyahu because again, he was calling him out like at the end, and there's videos on that as well and proof. And so I said there was absolutely motive for people that are pushing this far right radical Zion, far right and far left, but radical Zionist movement, and like stealing money from U.S. taxpayers and basically putting it in trust funds for people in Israel and to support a genocide and a war, and people within Israel as well. They're speaking out. There have been protests and riots for years. More and more people are refusing to serve, even though it's mandatory service in Israel, because they don't support what's going on. They don't support Netanyahu. They know he lied, and that that he funded Hamas and allowed them to do what they did, and had to stand down, which I talked about even at the beginning. If you look at my videos from over 2 years ago, and that was not, people were not nice to me when I was calling that stuff out. Like let me tell you, I've said that, talking about COVID, talking about the moon landings, talking about the trans woke DEI stuff, like I've gotten hate and I've gotten doxxed, but nowhere near like I did when I was talking about October 7th and what I assessed actually happened and leading up to it, and then afterwards, and a lot of misinformation that was being shared, just like Russia, Ukraine, and stuff like that, and so much more hate because, yeah. Anyways, what a time! But all that information is now finally coming out, and people like myself, like I had a small platform, October 7th, 2023. Like I was on Rumble at that point, not for very long. And then you have people like Charlie Kirk, who again I respected. There was so much he said that was so incredible and insightful, especially for his age. He was a family man. He was a Christian. I respect and admired that so much in him. And but the thing with his discussion on Christianity and Judaism and not seeing that there's a difference between being someone that's Jewish or someone that's Israeli or someone that's that follows like Judaism, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And people believe this to be an ethnicity as opposed to a religion, and so it's just more convoluted than people think. And then Ben Shapiro at that time too, like showing what he would claim to be like charred, burned baby bodies when it was AI edited from puppies. And again, I will say that I was one of the first people that called that out right at the beginning. And I got a little bit of traction on social media for that. But again, I'm shadow banned. And people get warnings to even just follow me on social media. And but yeah, I'm going up against people like that who have millions and millions of subscribers and viewers. And I get paid a lot of money to push that friggin' narrative. And yeah. And so, but they finally were starting to turn.
Well, a tad bit dramatic. First recorded death due to tick-borne meat allergy. Alpha-gal death. Man dies from tick bite meat allergy. So now if you eat a hamburger and you've been bitten by this tick, you have a deadly autoimmune response. You don't just get sick, you die.
See what I mean? A tick that gives you a disease that makes...
For anyone that's been watching me since the beginning, how many times have I warned people about ticks and about how they're possibly being, because they've been dropped in other areas before to infect crops and people and animals and stuff like that all over the friggin' world. And people do this. And I said people were saying that they were going to do this, and like people that work within these organizations and these institutions or these committees and panels to move these along. And I've even talked about Bill Gates with the mosquito factories that he has. Like this is a fact. Okay, where like millions of or billions of friggin' mosquitoes are like dispersed in the air. Okay, and he has like all these like shares and stocks and connections with like the pharmaceutical complex and stuff like that. So like, oh, like you can infect people and then give them the cure. This, I was talking about ticks and allergies to meat. Okay, and this clown, this little beta soy boy talking about that and being serious about it and saying like this like be warned, this will happen if we don't address it. And someone has already died from it. This is so unnecessary death. Like, this is what I mean. It's absolutely ridiculous. Like, people, I don't understand, are just not, like, they're so busy with watching sports. They're so busy with this and they're so busy with that. But not actual politics at this point and real-time events that are happening. And, like, just not a clue in the world. No one's doing their own research.
Makes you allergic to meat and then you die. Really?
Avoided.
Possibly we can use human engineering to make it the case that we're intolerant to certain kinds of meat, to certain kinds of bovine proteins. And there's actually analogs of this in life. There's this thing called the Lone Star tick, where if it bites you, you'll become allergic to meat. I can sort of describe the mechanism.
Huh.
Yeah, I can describe the mechanism. We need protein and animal meats and animal fats in order to survive and be healthy. Full stop. So that is an attack on human beings to do that. And someone's already died. At least one person confirmed. And guaranteed animals are being impacted by this as well, dropping ticks all over the from the skies into all over the place. Urban areas, rural areas. And this year, the ticks, I have never seen this many ticks. Every year, it seems like there's more and more. Like, I don't know if it's just some kind of like an infestation, whatever, but I do. It's just weird. Just friggin' weird.
Say, I'm thinking that eventually somebody's going to have to look into this Gates character. What do you think?
You're watching the Kramer Says Project.
How is that guy not in jail yet? Oh, when you have money. All right. So yeah, for Canadian content, I highly recommend Moose on the Loose and Jasmine Lane and Mario for the North for so much stuff, like the budget, people that were, abstained from voting, all of that stuff, predictions for Canada. Jasmine too, she's pretty bang on with what she's predicted. And in the last 24 hours, so. Yeah. It would be nice if she was working in the House of Commons. Okay, so this is from Candace. She posted this 16 hours ago. Wait, let me refresh.
When you cross a line.
Yeah, okay, so I've watched 2 minutes and then I stopped. So yeah, 16 hours ago, Candace Owens. So Operation Mocking Plane, the Charlie Kirk plot thickens. She already has 1.5 million views, streamed 6 hours ago. So that's why I'm going to watch it with you guys, and then I'm going to share any critique or commentary I have.
To strongly suggest somebody's guilty of something.
All right, you guys, happy Monday. A little bit of history for you today. It was after the public execution of sitting President JFK in 1963 that the CIA established Operation Mockingbird. Deep state assassinations require deep state solutions. They spent an offensive amount of money to control the press and to control the narrative, to put an end to the public asking common sense questions about what actually transpired on that fateful day in Dallas. To put it simply, the deep state declared a psychological warfare campaign on the people.
See that
In effect,
I
their
agree with.
soldiers were.
And so that's where I was saying, like there is absolutely motive, and there was absolutely ramping up like these campaigns, like even with Netanyahu and AIPAC and ADL, et cetera, wanting to like show Israel in a better light, so that again, so the money can keep on flowing with these lobbyists, these friggin' lying lobbyist propagandists. Anyways, and yeah, and so he wanted to have interview, like, yeah, like to go to the U.S., to go to like these like freaking campaigns, like going on podcasts and stuff like that to better his image. And I'm like, if people fall for that, then you are brainwashed, right? Like if people start like liking Netanyahu or supporting him, despite the fact that he should be in jail, and he's like lengthening a war, a genocide, because he doesn't want to be held accountable for his corruption. Oh my God. Yeah, so people start liking that war criminal. Congratulations, you've been brainwashed. And so he absolutely, especially over the summer and beyond, like wanted to amp up his like assisting in making, again, like him have a better reputation. And it's not working. It's really not working. Now he's got the Heritage Foundation, like I said before, with Project Esther looming, and Mark Levin, who's a sellout to the U.S., and Ben Shapiro, sellout to the U.S., married to someone from Israel. Children are so this is what I mean. Like, you care more about Israel, so then move there, okay? Because what you're creating is you're creating people to be like anti-Semitic internationally by lying about what's going on in one country. And we're flying the Israeli flag that even Jeff, like he's addressed and shared videos on, where he's like actually talking to people, very brave, and taking his own time and his own personal money to do this, to say, why do you have 6 Israeli flags and 1 American flag on a government building? And these are fair and valid questions. This does not make him an anti-Semite at all. It makes him, anyways, it's just ridiculous to me. Like, you should not be flying another country's flag on your government buildings. If it's like for an honorary special occasion, like for a short period of time, like whatever. But I don't think that should happen, though. I don't think other countries' flags, unless you are in like a NATO alliance or Five Eyes Community Alliance or whatever, you're actually working in an alliance with these countries, then yeah, the countries that you're working with and have an alliance with or an agreement with or whatever, yes, all those flags go up, sure. Not the pride flag. And anyway, again, I'm on all these friggin' tangents. And so, yeah, and so what they do is they further radicalize people in various different ways. Palantir is known to do that, and other Cambridge and Johns Hopkins University, and again, media controlled. And so when you ramp things up and continue with this narrative, and you further increase like fascist, Nazi, threat to democracy, blah, 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 people end up getting further radicalized. And it's inevitable that people will go to extremes when you just keep on, again, feeding into this negative, false narrative. And so, and I do think that Tyler Robinson was I think that he's the one that shot Charlie Kirk. I think that he was a fall guy. I think that he was brainwashed, radicalized, a disgusting human being for doing what he did. But I don't think he did it alone. And again, I've said this since the beginning. We need to have proof, though, with phone conversations, with meetings, with all of that stuff. And I think, again, I'm hoping that more and more of that stuff is going to come out into the public. Just like with Thomas Matthew Crooks, way more information is coming out that even Tucker Carlson's talking about, and things that I have said. Look at my videos, even at the time, where like, this doesn't make sense. This has to be some kind of a deep state cover up, whether it be them involved in it, like Kim Cheatley and Nancy Pelosi, like these friggin' clowns, or intentionally sabotaging events with like lack of coordination and stuff like that they were doing by design, because inevitably something was going to happen when you do that, when you loosen your security measures and things like that, and then it ramp up like very extreme negative rhetoric towards individuals. And I think Trump said that he had like a 98% negative, like he had 98% negative reviews from essentially like mainstream media, like CNN and things like that, and MSNBC. And so when like almost 100% of what they're saying about the individual is extreme, like almost 100% of it is extreme, then like what do you think is going to happen? when you're also telling men that they can be women and women that can be men, and that men could go into women's locker rooms and showers and children's, lockers and showers, and that, anyways, so many other things I won't get into, but so yeah, I'm open to them having some kind of involvement in amping up the negative pressure towards Charlie Kirk. And I think that if he was still alive, I think that Ben Shapiro would be, I don't even think they were friends or anything. Anyways, maybe they were. I don't care. It doesn't matter if people are friends or not. They can still converse as adults and have debates and public discussions and work together. But yeah, Charlie Kirk, the way that he was moving or shifting his rhetoric was not good for Ben either. And so he should not be the one that takes over Turning Point USA.
The journalists and the writers, their goal obviously to get people to just stop asking questions, to almost criminalize asking questions via methods of gaslighting. Fast forward to 2025, and they're running the exact same playbook. Charlie Kirk was assassinated in broad daylight, and they immediately deployed their troops to criminalize asking questions.
What are you supposed to take from the everyone? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I think the implication was dramatic, and then I think a lot of people reading the tweets would assume that she meant Erica Kirk.
Either Erica Kirk is evil and was in on it, or Candace Owens is an evil.
I think that what Candace Owens is doing right now is evil. It is evil what she's doing right now.
Post Charlie, there was so much unity, so much excitement, so much resurgence in faith and newfound interest in faith, and that now there is discord, so many distractions, and that is just like Satan, who comes to steal, kill, and destroy. He is called the great accuser. He is the sower of discord, the author of confusion.
The reason I haven't waited on things is I'm an eyewitness to events, and they said, don't comment on things because anything you say can mess that up. I don't want to mess up any trial for the person who did this.
That's 1,000% right. But Candace Owens is well within her rights to suggest certain things and all this, and she has the right to free speech and all that. That's fine. She's right to ask questions. I just think it is hurtful and not helpful when you cross a line to strongly suggest somebody's guilty of something for which you have no evidence.
Challenge accepted, Frank Turek. Let's go Max today. Welcome back to Candace. Pastor Rob McCoy, let's not forget him too, because he's the spawn of naval psychological intelligence, psychological campaigns upon the public. And here's what he has to say about matters. Take a listen.
I want to read you a passage out of Romans. It says in Romans 12, 15 and 16, rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. Be of the same mind toward one another. Do not set your mind on high things, but associate with the humble. And do not be wise in your own opinion. I think that's a fitting verse. I mean, we're hearing all kinds of speculation about Charlie and what he believed and didn't believe. And I just have to tell you, this is not the time for it. It's a time to minister to the family. They have a husband and a father to bury. We have a friend to bury, a brother to bury, a son to bury. And the world is mourning. And this is not the time to get clicks. It's not time to build your empire. It's time to just simply weep with those who weep. And it's time to just humble yourself and not make it all about you. It's about the Lord.
You hear that, Christians? Asking questions is just, it's not about you. I mean, is there anything that they didn't try? You're making money off of this. It's unbiblical. Charlie wouldn't want this. His family is grieving. Not right now. Let's at least wait a couple of weeks. It's going to ruin the case. You'll get into heaven as long as you don't think about it. If you don't think about what happened on 9/10, then you're guaranteed a slot into heaven. You know, I used to really lament the fact that I grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. Seriously, I hated that I didn't grow up rich. Who didn't, right? Who does not hate if you grow up without a lot, that you weren't just born into the right circumstances? And now I reflect on those feelings and I wouldn't change a single thing. I am actually so grateful. That's what I want to say today. I am so grateful about where I started my life in St. John's Towers. I look at that building now with such pride, and I am grateful to have not grown up with a silver spoon in my mouth because it fortified my character and it gave me a lot of common sense, basic survival skills. It requires gut instinct. And I had to learn at a very young age to read people. I think that's my superpower, actually, just being able to look at someone and sense danger or sense deceit. I can just look at Rob McCoy, and for me, it's a no. It's obviously a no. Same thing, by the way, I should mention with Steven Crowder. I have never been a fan. He just always gave me the energy of a pathological liar. I trust my gut. I don't trust influencer campaigns. I don't trust celebrities because they're raising their arms and they glitter and shine and they tell me that I should roll up my sleeves and get a vaccine. I don't listen to any of that. I trust my gut instincts, always. And my gut started to tell me that they suddenly began panicking when I discovered the Egyptian planes. They did what we now term a pre-bunking, right? A pre-bunking is when you say something casual and then they send out like a full fleet against you to not even actually debunk you, but they're just so extreme in not debunking you that they even lie about what you said. And that lie tends to actually foreshadow something that they don't want you to know. So I'll give you a perfect example. On October 11th, when I infamously tweeted about the Egyptian military plane that left Provo on the morning of Charlie Kirk's assassination, I got the time zone wrong by a couple of hours. And they completely overreacted. I mean, an account that didn't even exist wrote, oh, the time zone is wrong. Next thing you know, it was trending. And they pretended it had been officially debunked just because the departure time was wrong. But that wasn't even enough for them. They were so alarmed. And I was off air at that time, right? I took a 2-week break. They still found something to scandalize when I wasn't even on air, something that I didn't even say. They sent undercover operatives to sign up for my private book club that I kept on Tuesday. And then they took out a clip of that book club, from that book club, and accused me of accusing Erica of murdering her husband. I mean, they manufactured that claim out of thin air. And then they made it go viral. They sent it out to all the right people, Steven Crowder, right? Everyone suddenly making videos saying that because I said he was betrayed by everyone, obviously what I meant was Erica Kirk murdered her husband. And this was all happening because I mentioned the Egyptian plane. I am certain of it. And so that you can look backward and really see how these psychological campaigns work, I want you to watch this clip of Steven Crowder trying to convince people that despite the words that are coming out of my mouth, they shouldn't listen to what I'm saying. He actually knows what I really meant, which is something that I didn't say. And yeah, here it is. Here's that clip.
But you watch this clip in its entirety, and it seems pretty blatant that she's saying, and people are interpreting it this way, which is also important, that the Trump administration, not whatever it was, we went from underground Jew tunnels, Mossad, the Trump administration killed Charlie Kirk.
Just really needed to just take a breather and really process everything that happened with Charlie and what it kind of means in terms of where we are. And I think it is a circumstance where we just know that he was truly betrayed in one of the most egregious ways that I think I've ever seen. It has made me lose faith in politics. It has made me fully lose faith in Trump. And my heart aches for the fact that he gave so much of his life to Trump and to politics. And they just were like, nope, that is it. It serves us or it doesn't serve us and we want to move on. And so here's a holiday. Bro, if they try to give me a holiday, what is with them giving people a holiday after they kill them? Why is that a thing? You know what I mean? Like, oh, Martin Luther King, what about this holiday? What about this boulevard? Anyways, let me knock it off. Like, they're going to give Charlie Kirk a boulevard. They already did. They did in Israel. They gave him freaking boulevard. It's like, as soon as they give you a boulevard and a holiday, they definitely killed you. Okay, there's no question. They killed you. There's no way. That's like their signature thing. It's like that's what they do. It's the Fed signature. It's how they sign off after they murder you. So like holiday and a boulevard. And it's never on a nice side of town either. Like Charlie Kirk Boulevard is not going to be a nice side of town. Anyways, I will be back on the 27th, you guys. Thank you guys for all the support throughout these couple of weeks, these last really kind of 6 weeks since Charlie died. And we will see you guys then.
Well, let me first be tactful here and tell you that outrageous claims, and this is an outrageous claim, require outrageous evidence. Of course, as is par for the course, none has been presented. You know who's really close to President Trump, and you know who people are now saying stood to gain? Well, Charlie's wife, Erica Kirk, who has now been put, Candace with that language, with this accusation, has put the wife of Charlie Kirk, and she'll say, that's not what I tried to do. It is. It's the result. Erica Kirk in the crosshairs. There's no middle ground here right now. Either Erica Kirk is evil and was in on it, or Candace Owens is an evil.
No matter how many times I watch that clip of me talking about Martin Luther King Boulevard and Charlie Kirk Boulevard, I do not get from that Erica Kirk killed her husband, but that's what they went with. Those were talking points that were delivered to them. They were supposed to go out of the gate with that. The question is why? Okay. Retrospectively, that was a clue. They were panicking. They were trying to pretend, me saying that everyone betrayed him, which obviously was not about Erica. It also wasn't about Charlie's mother or Charlie's father or Charlie's children, but they were specifically trying to struggle session that into a slight against Erica rather than more obviously suggesting that people at Turning Point USA betrayed him, which Erica Kirk was not an employee of leading up to his death. Why were they doing that? Then, of course, that made me only look further into the Egyptian planes, and I discovered that the planes had been tracking Charlie. We showed you guys this, right? We created this document and we organized it SUBND being the blue plane, and then tail number SUBTT being the yellow plane. That seems to have struck even more fear into the nest of mockingbirds. In fact, they sent Mother Mockingbird out, Ben Shapiro, to make the exact same wild allegation out of thin air that I said something specifically about Erica when I had not. Again, I'll ask the question, why Erica? Why didn't Ben on stage say she accused Mikey or Rob McCoy? I've done multiple episodes now on Mikey McCoy, on Rob McCoy, speaking about Andrew Colvett, Alex Clark. Why did they keep going back to Erica? What is it about these Egyptian planes that were making them spiral? Now, I'm going to let you guys know right now that it is difficult to investigate a matter, especially when it involves a person that you know, because there are minor things that I immediately noticed that were off or unlikely that would not have necessarily alarmed the general public. For example, one of the earliest alarms that went off for me was the fact that Terrell Farnsworth, the guy who takes out the SD cards, was there at all. Okay. Terrell does not do college campus events. He doesn't do that. He's at the top of the company. He does the big events, the SAS, the AmFest. He does not do college events. But of course, he told me they were trying something new that day. And it must have been so new that it was over by the next event after Charlie died because he wasn't there again. So he just out of the blue was at this event and then he wasn't, and he secured the SD cards. Okay. It was something that I noticed that the rest of the world would not have taken as a concrete fact. It is also how I felt, and I'm sharing this with you now for a reason, when I learned that Charlie flew into Salt Lake City that morning. Because why didn't he fly into the much closer Provo airport? Now, ostensibly, the answer is because he had an interview with a person that nobody really knows. He's a managing director of a restaurant fund. Andrew K. Smith, out of nowhere, does this restaurantology interview with Charlie. And so Charlie flew into Salt Lake to make this interview happen. That to me felt like an oddity, okay? Because in a typical scenario, Charlie is not going to be incentivized to go out of his way because he would only do it actually if there was a big donor on the hook. And maybe that's what he was told. This guy's going to give a ton of money to Turning Point USA. Or B, because it was a major political person. Otherwise, for the sake of a podcast, people travel to Charlie, okay? If you want to get Charlie, you're going to travel to Charlie to make that happen. He's not going to go out of his way. To me, the common thing that always happened was they would set up an interview in an empty room at the campus, at UVU campus. They would have had this guy in the corner and Charlie would have flown into Provo. So I felt, again, didn't share it at this time, that they diverted Charlie Kirk to Salt Lake City for a reason, okay? Something else you should know about Charlie is Charlie was obsessed with planes. Okay, my husband and him actually shared this in common, where every time we'd board a plane, Charlie would know exactly, like, way too many facts about the plane. If we were boarded an old American Airlines flight, he'd be like, oh, they actually took these planes out of service in the 1970s. He just had a lot of Snapple facts when it came to planes, something that I just do not dedicate any of my time into learning about. He really liked planes and knowing everything about them. And more crucially, I want you guys to understand this, Charlie had a photographic memory. He did. Donor names, emails, numbers. Charlie Kirk was a walking Excel sheet. You'd walk into a room, he'd say, that's so-and-so, 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 so-and-so. He works for so-and-so. She works for so-and-so. They gave this much last year. That is why he was able to turn Turning Point USA into a successful machine, because of his memory. It was unbelievable. It's all going to be relevant now, okay? So you have to remember that Charlie landed into Salt Lake City at 9:23 a.m. local time. I suspect that if he had instead landed into Provo, he would have recognized the blue Egyptian plane, okay? It's not every day that you see an Egyptian military craft. It is now my well-informed opinion that he would have looked at that plane and he would have recognized the blue plane, and he would have instantly realized that something was amiss. And now I'm going to explain to you very carefully why I suspect that it is highly likely that Charlie would have recognized that plane. Okay, tail number SUBND, the blue plane. A pregnant mommy sleuth who was locked into this investigation discovered something that me and my team had missed. I consider her, obviously, and all of you to be my decentralized intelligence agents. Anyway, she sent me a rather urgent email, and I'm obviously protecting her identity for reasons that are clear. But I want you to know that this discovery is due entirely to her. She is the person that in this regard went max for Charlie when I missed something. Her email stated in effect that I was only partially right about the plane tracking Charlie, that she had done an additional 15 hours of research and was able to discern that the person the planes were actually tracking for years was Erica. Not Charlie, but Erica was the one being tracked by these planes. And indeed, it turns out that she was correct. She discovered that between 2022 and September of 2025, both of those aircrafts, SUBTT, the yellow plane, and SUBND, the blue plane, showed 68 overlaps with Erica's documented locations, okay? 68 overlaps. I have since been able to add now 73 times that this overlapped, okay? And 29 of those instances also happened to include Charlie. Charlie was also present. And that's what I was stumbling upon when I was looking into this. I was like, why is this plane where Charlie is? The flights were majority clustered within 5 states, Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, Delaware, and Utah. And it's a pattern that she believes is statistically not random. I'm telling you this information has been completely verified. I am showing you this on a spreadsheet now. These are all the instances in which this plane, 68 instances that this plane crossed with Erica. And I'm also going to say this includes overseas as well, okay? So my instant question becomes, why didn't Turning Point acknowledge that this plane was familiar to them? When I was taking all of these figurative online bullets, someone could have easily said something, right? That's kind of a repeat thing in this investigation. Josh Hammer lies, I get attacked, Turning Point just stays silent. They know he's lying, but they allow the lie to flow. Alex Clark lies, I get attacked, I'm telling the truth. Turning Point knows it, but they kind of allow this like Catholic thing, lie to flow. And the influencers are allowed to lie. Nobody at Turning Point ever just steps to clarify that I'm onto something or I'm telling the truth about something. And when it comes to these Egyptian flights, the math on this is indisputable. There is less than a 0.00000001% probability, okay, under random distribution models that these Egyptian planes coincidentally landed around Erica at these times. Like I said, this plane was not just with her in America, it was also tracking her overseas as well. I flagged this because I was alarmed because I thought it was tracking Charlie. And I am telling you that this plane, in addition to Charlie, and primarily actually was tracking Erica. Now, let's get to the day of the assassination. On the day of Charlie's assassination, we know the yellow plane took off in the morning, but the blue plane did not take off in the morning. The blue plane, SUBND, did, however, power on. And I want to be very clear as to what I mean when I say that this plane was on. I am saying that it was transponding, okay? It's transponding at the FBO at Duncan Aviation, a private terminal. So at the very least, they powered up the electronics. At most, they fully powered it on and the engine was running. What we know for certain is that it did not move from the FBO. Did not move. It was just on and transponding. And I want you to recognize, I'm going to make it clear for you what are the times that they were transponding. It's 2 times. And I'm going to tell you those times, but first I'm going to have Mark pull this up and he can tell us what it is that we're looking at here and how we were able to find this information about the jet that was just sitting at the FBO.
Yeah, so it looks like, based on this information that I found, and I had to figure out how to use this website because my mother didn't take enough Tylenol when she was pregnant with me, so I can't get too detailed on it. But essentially, all the flight radar websites only show when the plane is actually in the air. But if the plane is on the ground and transmitting, that data from the ADS-B transponder still goes out. So this website, ADS-B Exchange, takes that raw data. And so I was able to find it on September 10th. If you look on the very left of the frame, it shows September 10th. And it looks like there's just one data point. But what I did is I zoomed in, and the plane's actually not moving. It's just GPS is a little bit inaccurate when you're this close. But you're able to see all these different times here. And that is the UTC time zone, also known as Zulu time. So subtract 7 hours from that to get Utah time. And so I tracked all of these down, and I was able to find that the plane was transponding from 9:05 a.m. until 10:34 a.m. Then it was off. And then at 12:40 p.m., it came back on and turned off again at 1:29 p.m.
Okay, I'm going to repeat that so that everybody understands. We were able to discern from this data as follows. On September 10th, on the day of Charlie's assassination, this plane first transponded from 9:05 a.m. plus 36 seconds until it was turned off at 10:34 a.m. and 5 seconds. Then the plane turned back on, the transponder was turned back on just 17 minutes after Charlie was shot at 12:40 p.m. and 53 seconds, and it stayed on until 1:29 p.m. and 40 seconds. So what was the blue plane doing sitting on the tarmac? We can only imagine what it was doing, okay? We can run a couple of options here. It's possible that they were just running a maintenance check. Duncan Aviation does offer maintenance repairs. It's therefore possible that it just chose to run some maintenance checks at an unfortunate time, okay? Another possibility is that a military jet, particularly one from a foreign country, would likely be equipped with encrypted satellite-based communications capabilities. If you wanted to make an untraceable phone call, as an example, that would be a good place to do so because only the NSA would be able to intercept that call. And it's pretty obvious that the deep state doesn't seem particularly interested in the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So that'd be a safe place to communicate on that plane. Like I said, these are our options. What we can do now, however, is we can add this to our list of verifiable Turning Point USA lies because I'm going to count this as a lie by severe omission. By keeping your mouth shut and allowing Candace to take all the figurative bullets as she points out the oddity of a plane that you guys recognized, okay? My point is that these planes were known to Turning Point USA, and we all deserve to know why they were on the ground on that day, what they were doing on the ground on that day, and also why Turning Point chose to stay mum when every influencer under the sun and every publication attacked me for even mentioning the planes, making it seem like I was dumb, I was stupid. Turning Point USA is able to provide answers to these questions. There is more that I know, by the way, but I want to challenge them to respond to this first. Were these Egyptian military planes familiar to Charlie Kirk? It is a simple yes or no question. And answer it carefully, please, Andrew Colvett, spokesperson for Turning Point USA. Because there is something very specific, Andrew, that you told me that happened when you arrived into Provo on the tarmac that day, and it is now playing over and over and over again in my mind, and it isn't adding up. Another point that I'd like to follow up with, Andrew Colvett, let's stick with you, is that in the hospital on that day, you told me, you were in the hospital, that you were told that there was a credible threat against me and Tucker Carlson. Specifically, you told me that me and Tucker Carlson were on a list and that you were just telling me as a friend that me and Tucker should lay low. And after you told me that, I ended our phone call and I immediately called Tucker Carlson. And I said, hey, terrified, like obviously crying all day and telling him that he and I have to lay low because there's a credible threat. And it is now really living inside me that you did not tell me who that threat was from. I assumed the feds told you, but I asked you the question, why wouldn't the feds call me directly if there was a threat against my life? No such call has come in. How is that possible? How could someone have told you that there was a credible threat and that me and Tucker Carlson should lay low, and yet me and Tucker have since not been notified by any federal agency about those credible threats? Who do those threats come from? Because I got to tell you, there are a lot of people making videos about me and Tucker Carlson, and none of them are Egyptians, okay? In fact, it's the Israelis. It is Israel that seems deeply upset with me and Tucker Carlson. They are not letting it go. They are making threats on every stage, okay? People that are tied to Israel are making threats against me and Tucker Carlson, demanding that we be canceled. So who specifically told you in the hospital room that there was a credible threat against my life? I'm going to need that information, okay? I want to know that now because the stakes seem pretty high and I have a lot of questions. This is probably a good time to tell you all that I am starting to piece together another scenario that could have happened. And there was another flight that I am now very interested in. And I believe that somebody somewhere knows something about this flight. So pay attention to this. The tail number is N560TW. N560TW. It departed on the morning of September 10th from Scottsdale, Arizona. And it landed into Provo at 10:06 a.m. It then immediately turned around and departed for Santa Barbara. I'm assuming it maybe picked somebody up. And then it departed Santa Barbara at 11:37 a.m. for Scottsdale, landing at 12:44 p.m. There's a chance that you were working at the airport, that you saw somebody that morning. Maybe you were in Santa Barbara. Maybe you were in Scottsdale. Somebody saw something, and I'm asking you to email us more tips at CandaceOwens.com. I am interested in that.
So if it was the American government tracking these credible threats to Tucker and Candace, they would likely let them know. And so I'm thinking it possibly could be Mossad, the Hasbara, yeah, it could be.
Flight. We're not done yet. There's more. I know something else about the Egyptian flights. This time,
Or like some kind of private
another
security
mommy
company.
sleuth. I learned that
Working with
oddly, Duncan Aviation, where that
Israelis.
plane was transponding from, the FBO in Provo sourced rental cars for these quote unquote Egyptians when they landed a couple of days before this operation. And I didn't just learn that. I actually have the license plates number for 4 of the vehicles that they rented. Okay. Honestly, you guys, it brings me great pleasure to deliver this information because now surely Tulsi's office can get involved because those darn Egyptians are at it again. Those darn Egyptians. Here are the 4 license plates of
Are they
the
stolen by
cars
the
that
UK?
were rented. The first car rented was a silver 2025 Toyota RAV4. The Utah license plate number is T092ZS. The second car was a white 2025 Toyota Camry. Arizona license plate, CWN872. Don't worry, I'm going to show you guys this in a spreadsheet. The third car was a white 2023 Toyota RAV4. Utah license plate number TN12KM. The fourth was a black 2025 Toyota 4Runner. Utah license plate number Z923DA. To the students at UVU, do we have this somewhere? Did you pull it up or just did you show them it on the screen? I didn't see what you showed them. Okay, cool. License plates were shown. Now to the students at UVU, please check your phones, your pictures from that day, because if any of those cars were seen at UVU or around campus on that day, then we're going to be able to suspect something else. check if you hotels, maybe gas station, maybe you work somewhere. Look at those lights. Look for those plates during that time frame from when those cars were there until they departed. Somebody will be able to connect a dot somewhere. And of course, the email address to send it to is moretips@candaceowens.com. It's only Monday, folks. I've actually discovered a lot more, but it's only Monday. So let's take a break. All right, you guys, too many people have been vilified for standing up for the truth. Obviously, so many people have felt the sting of injustice, but also a lot of people right now are feeling courage. I'm definitely done. Also going to tell you guys about dose, because I think we all know that the modern day 50% in most of their participants, one shot of dose for your liver is a option. I have no doubt that Tucker Carlson and I are being threatened. That's pretty obvious. I think it's very obvious that nobody thinks Egypt is behind it. You know, the last time that narrative ran was probably the USS Liberty. That was the plan, right? To make us think Egypt had attacked us. But it wasn't actually Egypt that attacked that ship. It was Israel. Israel attacked that ship. Israel is growing increasingly alarming in terms of legislation that they're trying to get passed, trying to censor our speech, trying to take over social media campaigns. Bibi Netanyahu is name-checking me and Tucker Carlson, and all of their sycophants are on stage calling us out. So I'm going to connect that dot there. And like I said, there is more I know about those planes. But your move, Turning Point USA, because that's the last time you're going to have me gaslit about something and sit by idly and pretend you know nothing. It's interesting, too, because in a typical scenario, when somebody's murdered in broad daylight and they have like, $100 million organization behind them, it's common sense that you should check the people that work at that organization. Like that's like the first people that you should begin to investigate. So we reject your naval intelligence psychological operation where you tell us that that's a weird thing to do, okay? It's always somebody close to you. If there's a financial motive, yeah. And I would say an organization of that size that misses their deadline, their tax deadline for the first time, that's a little weird. Yes, they did. A YouTube channel known as Wolves and Finance did a report on this, which I'm going to show. Now, this wasn't the people that I was working with, and there is somebody else that I told you that I'm going to have on my show that has been looking into this for a while. But this was extremely well done and at least brought forth some big questions that I think are on a lot of people's minds. How does an organization that size just miss they filed for an extension and then miss the extension deadline to file? Let's take a listen to a part of what they had to say.
Let's go look at the 990 forms that Turning Point USA submits to the IRS every year. These contain their annual financial statements. When you look at the forms, there are some very strange anomalies. Several of the 990 forms are missing. Turning Point USA lists 4 related entities. There's Turning Point USA, Turning Point Endowment, Turning Point Action, and America's Turning Point. All different organizations do slightly different things. The Form 990 for fiscal year 2024 is posted for Turning Point USA, but it is missing for all the other 3 organizations. It looks like it was never turned in. This is a massive red flag. So Tyler Boyer is being snarky on X.com and telling people to go look at the annual financial audit, but the financial audit is missing from last year for 3 of the 4 organizations. This strange decision to hide their financial statements happened 4 months before Charlie Kirk was murdered. I will repeat for clarity. Someone at Turning Point decided not to file 3 of the 4 of their annual financial statements 4 months before Charlie Kirk appointed a new COO, requested a new audit, and was murdered. Those 3 financial statements are still missing.
So to be clear, that was another point that they gaslit me on when I told you that it was unusual that 7 days before Charlie died, he said that he wanted to establish Doge, right? Tyler came out and lied, and he said, this is just totally regular. And Alex Clark said, oh, every year since I've been here, this is what we do. And the guy starts this video by being like, you have to be an idiot to accept that as an answer. Of course, doing an audit has nothing to do with internally establishing a Doge, right? He recognized that something was wrong at the organization. And as I told you, okay, because I do not miss on these things, He was not just concerned about where the money was going, he was concerned about where it was coming from. And what I can tell you about Charlie is that if Charlie got clued into something, if Charlie was at first trusting his lieutenant and then he suddenly said, wait a second, what's going on over here? And he decided that he wanted to figure something out, he would have figured that ish out by sundown. Okay. That is how brilliant he was. If it had his attention, he would have figured it out by sundown. What did Charlie discover is my question. Okay. Now, to correct something that he says there, he says 4 months before. That's the regular tax deadline. It is actually normal. It is for big companies to file for a tax extension, but they missed that deadline as well. I think that was October 15th was a tax extension deadline. They have missed them both, and that is completely abnormal. And he is correct. If you go back and you look at Turning Point USA's filings before, they always file all of them at the same time. So this is unusual that they've left off 3 of them. And I'm going to let him get into a deeper clip here where he discusses the quote unquote missing 8.6 million. Take a listen.
Let us look at the one financial statement we do have for fiscal year 2024 for Turning Point USA. Schedule I shows grants and other assistance to organizations, governments, and individuals in the United States. This schedule shows you where Turning Point is sending its money. We see that a lot of money, $8,560,625, is being sent to America's Turning Point. They are sending it to their own shell company. Now, this is not necessarily illegal, except for the fact that the financial statement for the other organization is missing. We cannot see how this $8.6 million is being spent. This is very important because there are strange variances around this money. I have pulled the last 5 years of 990 forms for Turning Point USA. Here is a table with contributions compared with the largest expense, which are the grants from Schedule I. You can immediately see a strange dip between 2022 and 2023. This dip happens because in prior years, they were sending money to Turning Point Endowment. They were transferring millions of dollars. This stopped in 2021, and they started ramping up sending money to America's Turning Point. Let's break this down. First of all, I find it really unethical that they were sending millions of dollars to their own endowment. I know that a lot of nonprofits do this, but I think it is unethical. Do the donors know this is how Turning Point is spending their money? Turning Point USA is taking in donations and then sending the money to their endowment to invest in the stock market. In my opinion, they should be spending donations on operating their nonprofit, not on buying investments. As of fiscal year 2023, they had $61 million of assets in the endowment, which was generating $1.9 million a year of investment income. Personally, I think that's an unethical way to run a nonprofit, but that's just my opinion. But what is important here is what happened to the missing $8.6 million, the amount sent to America's Turning Point in fiscal year 2024. The amount of money sent to America's Turning Point was getting larger and larger, and because the financial statements are missing, we cannot tell how this money was spent. If we look at the prior year, the majority of the money was spent on other salaries and wages. How is this possible when America's Turning Point reports 0 employees? Does anyone else think that sounds a little suspicious? In my opinion, what I think is happening is I think there are fake people on the payroll. I think that paychecks are getting sent to people who do not really exist. And that would explain why we have a company with 0 employees with millions of dollars of salary expense.
Yeah, that sounds highly suspicious to me, especially when you add in the fact that Charlie wanted to establish a Doge 7 days before he died, when you also add into the fact that they're all telling strange lies, when you also add in the fact that there is this weird psychological campaign to tell us not to look at Turning Point USA, or we're going to go to hell, essentially. They're like using biblical passage to tell us why it's not moral. Do they think we are this soft and persuadable? Like, do we look like the kinds of people that are just going to watch an assassination in broad daylight and just let it go because some influencers insist that we do? No, sorry. It's not 1963. You're not going to get away with it this time. Anyways, he then goes on to describe how they conducted their own audit using a firm called Baker Tilly. I'll let him take it away.
What about Tyler Boyer's argument that they have an annual financial audit every year? If what I am saying is true, why wouldn't their annual audit catch these issues? The annual financial audit for Turning Point USA, Inc. and its affiliates was performed by an accounting firm called Baker Tilly. In the notes, they explain that they audited Turning Point USA, Turning Point Action, Turning Point Endowment, America's Turning Point, and TP USA Merch. That usually means they audited all the shell companies when they provided their opinion that the statements present fairly in all material respects. That means it is a clean audit with no problems. I wonder if Baker Tilly will provide an explanation why they can issue a flawless audit report when 3 990 forms were never filed with the IRS. And just to clarify, Baker Tilly's audit opinion letter is signed after Turning Point missed the filing date with the IRS. So there is no excuse for Baker Tilly not to mention this in their audit opinion. Erica Kirk assumed the role of CEO of Turning Point USA on September 18th, 2025, 8 days after Charlie Kirk was murdered. She has been the CEO for almost 2 months. She needs to answer these questions. If someone has lied on the 990 form, people go to jail for that. I want some explanation of why Turning Point USA sent $8.6 million to their shell company and then did not file financial statements. And Erica, I don't know who does the accounting at Turning Point, but if they have not been telling you about any of this, you need to fire your accountants immediately.
I think all valid points. And again, just to modify, it is possible that when they used that outside auditor, that they showed them all of the documentation and then they gave them a clean bill of health. And then for whatever reason, Turning Point decided not to file. It's possible. Okay. Like I said, probably a low probability, but it is plausible that they did that. But it is just a fact that they missed the filing extension deadline. So what's going on here? Where did the 8.5 million go? And what's also compelling about this video, which we didn't show, is that he clarifies that Turning Point USA actually decreased their staff, the 501c3 arm, 33% by 33%. So there was a 33% staff reduction. And yet the cost of salaries somehow went up. And to him, that looks suspicious. And I agree, that looks suspicious, right? And this, of course, is the kind of pressure that needs to be put on them. Yes, I said it was a very bad idea right off the bat for Erica, who's grieving her husband, to then instantly become a chairman and a CEO, because these are valid questions now that people are asking. And a chairman and a CEO is going to have to respond to those questions. You have to answer these questions when people are asking about money, especially given the fact that so many people, I mean, they cleared over $70 million in the first couple of weeks after Charlie was assassinated. Okay, that's a lot of well-meaning people that are giving money to this organization who are now learning how this organization functions by routing the bulk of their money, or to a lot of their money rather, not the bulk of it, into their endowment fund, right? That is not okay. We deserve answers to the questions that we are asking, and we're going to keep asking them. Okay? We're going to keep asking them because I know there are snakes at Turning Point USA. And I'm going to reveal more to you guys tomorrow. First, we'll take a quick break. And we'll be back with some comments and answers to your questions. All right, you guys, in all the time that I've been endorsing my wireless company, Pure Talk, I've never seen an offer like this. /Owens. Okay, I got a text from one of my friends that says, slight detail, but in September, don't forget, there was a daylight saving time switch. So to calculate the time that we said on Charlie's assassination, it was UTC -6, not -7. So for those times, you're going to adjust them 1 hour forward. Just to make that clear, because that will be the headline on X. She didn't calculate that right. It's a different hour because of daylight saving time. Okay, I got to get into a couple of things. First and foremost, if you would like to continue to support us, you can buy our book, Make Him a Sandwich, at makehimasandwich.com. And we have them up now, the signed copies by me, CandaceOwens.com, signed copies. Also, we have new merch on the website. is Coach Colin's channel, who has been doing some really great content daily on Charlie. Okay. I will say I did not vet that information. Obviously, we, no matter what, pull the top comment from a previous episode. I did see something going around on TikTok, and I can try to reach out to that person, but it's an eyewitness account until we have actual proof. It's basically their word versus his word. So we'd have to see something to be able to verify more that Rob McCoy was lying about this so-called Black Friday sale is going on right now. If you use code BLACK20, you'll get 20% off store-wide, excluding the books. This runs through to Cyber Monday, so don't miss out on that. Okay, let's get to the top comment from last Friday's episode. Somebody writes, a witness has come forward to say that Mikey never even went into the hospital at all when he got there in his car. He just picked someone up and he left. So not only did he run away from Charlie when he got shot, but he didn't even go into the hospital to see what was happening to him. And this proves more that Rob McCoy was lying about this so-called blood all over him, because we were thinking maybe it happened at the hospital. So where did this so-called blood come from that was apparently all over Mikey? Because it wasn't when he got shot and it wasn't at the hospital. The channel it's on is Coach Colin's channel, who has been doing some really great content daily on Charlie. Okay. I will say I did not vet that information. Obviously, we, no matter what, pull the top comment from a previous episode. I did see something going around on TikTok, and I can try to reach out to that person, but it's an eyewitness account until we have actual proof. It's basically their word versus his word. So we'd have to see something to be able to verify that. But everyone, by the way, I want to say to all the YouTubers, even if you're making small mistakes, the way that this works is they want to make you feel insecure. They want to make you feel dumb, stupid, and ugly for thinking. And you have to find within yourself the confidence to keep going, right? Because you are watching how they tried to, it was so sinister, the way they have been attacking me from the second that Charlie got shot, and trying to make us think that we're crazy for recognizing that everything is wrong about this day. That's a psychological campaign. That is what the war is nowadays. And I want to just encourage all the YouTubers and all the mommy sleuths. This is Project Mommy Sleuth, really, to keep going, to keep sending us emails, and we are going to solve this thing. Did he send?
I hate it when people say things like mommy sleuth. I'm sorry, but you guys don't have, respectfully speaking, Candace, again, like, you spend a lot of time working and conversating with so many different people and getting, whistleblower accounts, et cetera, and a huge following and a lot of money and support and backing by your husband. There's so much that can go wrong. This is what I mean. There are people like myself who have spent a career in the military as an infantry officer, and then post-military career, even within the military, working with the Five Eyes community, working in special forces, et cetera. And then after that, and even then working with so many different levels of government. Post-military career, still working with multiple levels of government, including the military, still communicate with them on a regular basis, et cetera. And I've done multiple contracts post-military, multiple in so many different ways. And so, like, you cannot replace that, respectfully speaking, if you've been at home raising children. I think that is absolutely what the majority of women should be doing. I admire it. I do think that there should be more traditional conservative women in Western society, again, so that we can thrive and advance our society. And it is what it is, but so the majority, but you can't have both worlds, right? Like, there come sacrifices. You sacrifice to have a family. We sacrificed to be in a career that's predominantly male, sacrificed having a family for that. We are the experts. Leave it to us, respectfully speaking, Candace. And again, you cannot put yourself in the same trad wife category when you were a liberal for most of your life. You just switched a few years ago. Excuse me. And thankfully she did. And she's very smart and things like that. But again, you don't spend a lot of time not working, it seems. And again, you don't have the same skill sets and experience. And it's just ridiculous. Our journalists sometimes think that they are just like superior to actual experts.
Relies intelligence agency
So no.
is going to solve this thing. And like I said, when I tell
Give me
you what
a
I know
break.
tomorrow, it's just, we're getting somewhere, you guys. We are getting somewhere. One day at a time, we are getting somewhere. Okay, what else do we have? We have a comment from the Paleo Rides. Right. Hi, Candace. I know you are on the right track. I've been watching daily and I was active on X. Well, until I called out Israeli propaganda, and then I was permanently suspended. I had to drive from Arizona to X headquarters in Texas to ask for a review, and finally won my freedom 2 weeks ago. They are bigly mad. Yeah. They are definitively running an operation on X. It's obviously military bots. Like I said, they boast if I make one mistake, it's like a trending topic for 3 days. And then when I drop truth, they're like, she's never dropped one fact. And I'm like, we have so many timelines. It's like crazy to say that we have not dropped any facts. Okay. It's like, that's like so beyond insane to try to suggest that we have not dropped facts when we have been the ones breaking virtually every story on this. And of course, credit to all the other people on X who have been doing the same thing. Ricardo Piquena writes, because I know we are completely and unconditionally loved and everything will be okay. It sucks that we are losing real human beings to their games. Keep searching for truth. Yeah, we're stumbling upon it. U.S. flagpole guy writes, Mommy Max for the wrong side of the tracks doing David stuff with her truth acts with class. You got me rapping out here. Thank you for that donation. Friendly Fairy writes, we all need a friend like you, sending love from Australia. Thank you for saying that. Natalie writes, Candace, my heart is beating so fast. This is insane. Your strength is so inspiring and we have your back. Let's effing go. I know you guys have my back. And I also know that Charlie has my back because Charlie always had my back and I always had his. And like I said, he knew that I'd be the one to defend him and I would stand up to all of these clowns and all of these people who pretend to be pastors and pretend to be biblical and pretend that they're doing this out of like some moral authority. You are the worst human beings in the entire world. Seriously, to hide behind a Bible, like that makes me angrier than anything else for some reason. Like to pretend that somebody pursuing truth when their friend is assassinated is some kind of an immorality or a quote unquote evil makes me sick. It literally makes me sick. The nerve of these people, the things that they did, but I will respect them in one regard. They knew that the first thing they had to do was when I was in my grief stage was to try to pretend Charlie and I didn't even have a relationship because they knew that I would be the one. They knew I was the anomaly. They knew I had already said F the money. They knew I had already said F the reputation. I don't care about the headlines. And because they tried to incentivize me with all of these things before. They knew that I would be the one to burn it to the ground and see what came from the ashes rather than to side with a lie. So credit to them for recognizing that I'm built different. New Life Plan writes, I was today years old when I learned that anyone can FOIA all flock license plate cameras, locations, and data points. Now you know too. What? Is this a thing? Can you FOIA all flock license? What's a flock license plate camera?
We talked a little bit about that off air. There's a network run by a company called Flock of automated license plate readers that are dotted throughout pretty much every town in the United States.
Let's go.
So we can, I looked up the locations. There are some somewhat near UVU as well. So we'll see if we could FOIA that information.
Effing go. Yes. I don't know how I missed that earlier. That is great news, you guys. I know the feds are trying to cover everything. More tips at CandaceOwens.com. We have to be faster than them, smarter than them. Somebody saw something. You have the license plate numbers. Let's go. Calcanus writes, amazing work. We deserved answers and Charlie deserves justice. He's going to get it. He is going to get it. This deep state operation ain't it. Zamet writes, Candace, go Mac. Charlie is watching. He is. Beth writes, Israel had a chokehold on America since JFK. Yeah. Trump couldn't have predicted this awakening. Couldn't he flip? He should resent the Zionist mafia for blackmail. Trump is old. My investments matter less than legacy or his soul. You know, I don't have to assign anything to Trump. I know that if I was at the end of my life, you know, like in my 80s, as he is in his 80s, I would be caring deeply about the state of my soul. I don't know what's motivating him. I really don't know what's motivating him, or rather what's not motivating him to get to the bottom of this when the entire world knows that what we've been told is BS. Why isn't Trump calling me like on the side and we're like, let's figure this thing out because Charlie loves Trump. So it really tells you that politics is fickle. You know, you shouldn't have a lot of friends in politics. And Booch writes, have you seen the new Sean Ryan with the security detail that took care of Charlie? Do you feel they are trying to push their narrative? We love you, Candace, and we're praying for you always. I have not seen it yet, but I intend to watch it and I will give feedback on it this week without question. It's on my to-do list. Emma White writes, Candace, I run ops for a nonprofit. Baker Tilly also is the company that files their 990s per the first page. Their audits are not considered valid. A separate company has to do an independent audit. Okay, very interesting that you're saying that. Again, we're reading comments live. So this is allegedly a Baker Tilly, don't come after me. But yeah, that video went deeper into some lawsuits that Baker Tilly was facing for not auditing things correctly. Now, that could be commonplace if you are an auditing firm. Maybe it's normal for auditing firms to be sued. I don't know. That is not an industry that I'm familiar with. GAZF25 writes, I'm 38 years old and never in my life has a journalist been this transparent with Americans, the youth of the nation. This is the way forward. Candace Owens journalism is the new standard. We are pioneering something. And we definitely are. It's never been done like this. No one has ever decentralized the intelligence. No one has ever asked for help. And I don't think there's ever been a person that has cared more, that has been standing against evil people, who was leading the investigation. I don't think that's ever happened. I think we're making history. We may not be here when it's celebrated, but we're making history, and what we do today actually does matter. I know that. And I don't care what any of these people say. I was clear. I was explicit when I said that I want war with all of you. Anybody that's lying is going to get exposed. I told you I felt it spiritually. Charlie told me he was betrayed in a dream. They laughed at me. They mocked at me. Well, who's laughing now? We'll see you guys tomorrow.